pleasant good morning. Thank you for joining our Building Resilience Through Digitization dialogue today. BELTRAIDE celebrates National Entrepreneurship Month in November, and this is a part of a feature that we have for the month. The focus of the webinar is to have experts share with us what it is that their organization is doing to bridging the gap with finance and technology for entrepreneurs. As you know, the month of November, we're slowly looking at embracing December, and that's usually the closure for the year. And technology continues to be the driving force, fostering economic activity around the globe. So we're living in the age entrepreneurs that are being celebrated by the media, academia, business support organization, and government. So essentially, we wanted to have this conversation with experts in their respective fields to discuss what it is that Belize needs to embrace as it relates to digitization. What are some of the tools, what are some of the frameworks available, and of course support available for MSMEs to look at having their business optimized through digitization. So we're focused on that. Today we have a very diverse panelists that will be joining us in the dialogue. We have Ms. Marissa Longsworth. She's the president of the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industries, and she will be our moderator for the discussion today. I will give an introduction to her before I pass over the baton to have her lead the discussion. We also have Mr. Ishmael Quiroz. He is the executive director at the Economic Development Council, Office of the Prime Minister, and at BELTRAIDE, we like to refer to Mr. Ishmael as our ally. We do a lot of work initiative with the EDC, and we're excited to always have him on board with us. And of course, he always accepts our invitation. So we're happy to have you join us in this conversation. We also have Mr. Rudolfo Carcamo, and he is the Senior Relationship Officer at Atlantic Bank. And Atlantic Bank has been one of our long-standing partners, particularly for the month of November. They have supported us since the inception and the growth of Entrecon, and so we're excited to have them a part of this discussion. We also have Ms. Marcia, Usher, and I was advised by Mr. Carcamo that this is definitely somebody that we wanted to include in the conversation, so we're excited to have her join us today. She is their retail manager. And of course, we have Mr. Francisco Gonzalez, who is the Senior Information Communications Officer at the Central Information Technology Office, and CITO has been one of our very reliable stakeholders that we've had several dialogues with. I think a couple of years back, we actually had Mr. Francisco a part of a panel for Entrecon. So we're excited to get the conversation started. Just to give a background on our moderator, Ms. Marissa Longsworth, as I shared earlier, she is the president for the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industries from 2020 to 2022. So we want to congratulate you on that appointment. And we know that from our experience with working with you, it definitely is an exciting time to have you on board, because we know you champion for MSMEs and you always have that focus on, including them in conversation and providing support to them. Just to give you a background on Ms. Marissa, she has been an attorney at law with 8 years experience overall working within Belize and Jamaica. Her focus and specialization is on internet laws with e-commerce, e-governance, and telecommunication policies. So you can see that she does bring a wealth of knowledge to the discussion, and she'll be guiding today's discussion. Just to mention, in addition to this, Ms. Marissa is currently the in-house attorney for SIL Global IP, which specializes in intellectual property management services. She's also a consulting attorney with Glenn D. Godfrey and Company Limited, and she has varying work experience, and we're excited to have her lead the discussions for us today. And of course, we're thankful for all of the panelists who have graciously agreed to participate in this dialogue. So I'll pass over to Ms. Marissa, and I am looking forward to the discussion and of course to have us converse, because I think it's important not only to have us share what it is that our organization is doing, but to see what are the synergies that exist across the board, and how is it that we can capitalize and have those synergies in a collective spirit that allows us to enhance what it is that we're doing in Belize collectively. So I pass it over to you, Ms. Marissa. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Monique, and thank you for that wonderful introduction that has me blushing, if you can see, but it really is based on our years of working together in so many different capacities. I am indeed a champion for BELTRAIDE, a champion for MSMEs and creative industries, which definitely fall within MSMEs. And so I'm particularly excited as well to have the banking sector here, because this conversation really has a lot to do also with how our cultural and creative industries can develop, as well as our health industries or science and technology industries. There's so much potential, but there is that need for us to have discussions like these, so that when we sit in front of the policymakers, the decision makers, and ourselves as decision makers, we align our thoughts and we find the synergies that will end up making our goals a reality. And I think that at the core of it, all of us, whether it's through the chamber, whether it's through the Economic Development Council, CETO, through the banking sector, Atlantic Bank, I believe that, and BELTRAIDE, of course, our core and overarching goal really is to see the growth of the business sector, the growth of the economy overall, and using our specialties, we will help that to happen. It's a big ecosystem and each of us play a very important role in it. And so I'm very encouraged that BELTRAIDE has put together a panel like this, which with such interesting discussion, not only interesting for me because of the field I've been in for the last 8 years as an attorney, but interesting because we found ourselves in a time where if we weren't willing to accept technology before, we most certainly have to not only accept it, but embrace it, use it, find several ways around it. You know, I even for myself, I have during this time learned so many different platforms. I'm sure we're using Zoom today, but we have Teams, we have, you know, GoToWebinar. And the point of that is similar to how we have had to adapt as professionals, the business sector has had to adapt as well. And the thing is that we are partially responsible for helping to create a facilitating environment for the business sector to be able to quickly adapt in times like these. I call it like a pandemic emergency management organization, in the same way that when a hurricane comes along, we have a system where we know when this flag is up or these two flags are up, these are the steps we have to take to protect ourselves, our assets, and to be able to ensure that we have the resilience to move on after the disaster. It's similar for the pandemic. This is a disaster in its own way, natural or man-made or whatever, that's up for discussion and that's a moot point. But the truth of the matter is that we have had to look at it in that way to say, what tools can we put together for the entrepreneurs, for the MSMEs, even the large businesses, to be able to first of all survive, but also to realize that the gap has widened, and that ties into the theme here, which is bridging the gap with finance and technology for entrepreneurs. Now, we have to admit that there was a gap even prior to COVID, and the gap has, of course, widened. And so it's very important for us to now take a look at how each of these organizations are going to be able to assist in bridging this gap. And some of the research that has come out of the Chamber of Commerce is that the gap in financing or access to finance for MSMEs, micro, small, medium-sized enterprises, was over $1 billion for Belize. And that estimate was by the International Financial Corporation, which is a branch of the World Bank Group. MSMEs account for roughly 70% of employment in Belize, but strangely, they have the most challenging time when it comes to accessing finance. Unlike larger companies that have established relationships with the banking sector, many MSMEs, especially startups, have constrained access to financing. And so we understand that there are several reasons for that, which I know that there is legislation in the works to try to deal with that. For example, a smaller business is less likely to have the traditional forms of securities that the bank would need, for example, land or other immovable assets. So looking at, for example, the credit bureau system, the collateral registry, the securitization aspect and the monetization of collateral, those aspects come in quite strongly as it relates to MSMEs in particular. And then we look at the aspect of technology, of course, and technology is intended really and truly to pack tools together for the purpose of entrepreneurs to be able to access them at reasonable, affordable pricing, and to be able to in some ways, unfortunately, lessen the human labor, or at least make human labor more efficient in one way and supplement their human labor with technology. And so even in terms of how we look at financing MSMEs, the question becomes, do we put a priority, for example, on MSMEs that have a plan as it relates specifically to going with technology versus other types of operations or operational mechanisms? And so those are the sorts of questions, some of them that we may explore today with our panelists. And you've already announced who those persons are. The intention in terms of the running order for today's panel is that we will spend a little time with each of these panelists and ask them a couple of questions. And then once we've gone through and spoken to each panelist, we will then do a little chit chat session followed by our wrap up, okay? So based on what comes out during our discussions, I'm sure we can then start to speak to each other and see how those synergies align, okay? So first, I would like us to start with Mr. Ishmael Quiroz. He's the Executive Director of the Economic Development Council. And of course, for the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Economic Development Council and the public-private desk in the Office of the Prime Minister is actually a result of the lobbying and advocacy of the business community and the chamber in particular, because we wanted to have a bridge in terms of discussion and dialogue between the private sector and have someone actually in the Office of the Prime Minister that could help us to sort of spread the message through the various ministries and entities as to what the business sector really needs. And remember, of course, that the Economic Development Council is made up of several stakeholders, as Ishmael will explain, that includes the Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And it is an overall strategic planning unit of sorts to try to develop projects that specifically will assist with doing business in Belize. So I will begin with Ishmael, and I will ask first, what is the objective of the Economic Development Council?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Moderator. And thank you, BELTRAIDE, for organizing this. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. I've found that one of the most effective ways to describe what the Public-Private Desk and the Economic Development Council actually is that voice for the private sector in government, to constantly remind the public sector colleagues of why it is important that service delivery or quality service delivery that is efficient is important to doing business, because time is money. And as we have all experienced, when trying to access a public service, whether it is renewing a license or applying for a permit, or filing annual returns at the company's registry, sometimes it can be, lengthy, unpredictable, and time consuming, and costly at the end of the day. And all of this adds up. And so it's been a constant journey of reminding public sector of the role that they play in economic growth, in the ease of doing business, and at the same time conveying to the private sector what government's limitations are. And by limitations, we mean resources, we mean very limited infrastructure, as well as the legislative framework, some of which is very outdated, and which I'll be very happy to speak when we get into the discussion about digitization. And so it's been this real bridging, as Marissa explained, between government and the business community to identify problems and to come up together with workable solutions that deliver better public service to make it easier to do business in Belize.
Great, thank you for that explanation. So you mentioned digitization, and it sounds like we're a little ready to get into that aspect of things, because it's very exciting, and we have seen developments in the last few months actually, which start to move towards even more so the regulatory aspect of digitization as well. So tell us about some of the digitization programs organized by the EDC.
Absolutely. And so, a lot of the work that we do is to identify those problem areas and then to formulate, a project approach to achieving solutions. And it's all under the umbrella of business climate reforms. So, really changing, innovating, making it, that much more efficient for government to deliver services to the private sector. And when it comes to digitization, because if I could just, underline and emphasize that when it comes to reforms, it doesn't necessarily mean only digitizing something or putting a service online. It may be just improved communication between agencies or improved instructions or on procedures. It may be an update to some policy or legislation to facilitate and skip out some steps that aren't necessary. But we've also found that digitizing services is also a way that we can really introduce efficiencies into the way that government delivers service. And as was mentioned earlier, we're in an age, in a pandemic right now, where business has to go on, both for businesses as well as for the government. And digital platforms are the way. They're here to stay. And that's one of the silver linings of the pandemic, that it's really accelerated the decision-making around putting some of these essential services online. And so what we have underway right now, which we affectionately call a digitization project, is a small technical assistance program funded by the Compete Caribbean of the IDB group that is seeking to digitize the Belize Companies and Corporate Affairs Registry. So, if anybody has had an experience with the company's registry, you have to go in person, fill out a form, and sometimes your papers get lost, and it's an annual thing. You have to submit your annual returns. You could do it through an agent, but that's costly. And so putting the services online is one way to really fast track, accelerate, make things predictable and reliable. And what we're doing is funding the upgrade and development of an e-registry, whereby you'll be able to access the services through an online platform. So for registering a business name and then everything else that follows in the life cycle of a business. However, it's not only a matter of creating a system or developing a website or a user interface. You also have to process re-engineer to simplify. So kick out some of those unnecessary steps and interlink all the agencies that are relevant to the delivery of a service. In the case of Belize, the process of registering a business name, unfortunately, takes on average 48 days at significant cost, whereby the information has to be, paper information has to be communicated across different agencies, and sometimes, agencies are actually missed. For example, the tax department, Social Security, all of this isn't interlinked. And so process reengineering, connecting all agencies together for data sharing, as well as, very importantly, for the very first time in Belize's history, digitizing the historical company files of over 18,000 companies that are registered in Belize, and these are domestic companies. That is important because the system is not workable or usable without information and data. And so this project is covering that. And very, very importantly, two aspects of that digitization project is the drafting of key digital legislation that are needed to enable the delivery online, not only of the company's registry services, but a plethora of e-commerce activities. And so we have things like digital signatures already now drafted and ready for the cabinet to run with. There's data sharing, there's data protection legislation that are essential. So the digital legislation is essential. And the final thing is communication and change management. All of these things are changes to the way that businesses have, or that government business have always been done. And so we have to really support the people who are at the front line, in this case, behind their computer screens, delivering this service to change, right? And they need support. And as well, the consumers, the end users need to be sensitized and educated as to how to use these new services. So in a nutshell, that is our digitization project. The first service is the digitization of the company's registry, but we also have process mapping for other public services like trade license or applying for a construction permit that are also ready to run with. So, we're excited to really get those underway.
Wonderful. It sounds as though we also went into some of the end products that entrepreneurs can expect as well through the programs that you are undertaking or supporting. As an attorney myself, I do several company registrations, business name registrations for clients. And so I am seeing the actual transition in action from, waiting 3 weeks for a name search, which really, if you type into a digitized thing, it should take 2 seconds to see if there is a match with a name. But because it's currently being handled with the type of process that it is, the ones that human is not available or is overloaded, then unfortunately clientele has to wait. And so I think that, from even my own perspective, I can see already that we've gone into some amount of semi-e-filing. And that has been working a little bit better from what we have noticed as well. And so we really do look forward to seeing the full outlay of the program to bring the company's registry to that ultimate point of being digitized. So where does the EDC, because of course you may have CETO, for example, that might actually be designing the software and so on and rolling it out in the offices. Where does the EDC exactly come in a project? Are you the one that identifies it and says, guys, we need to push this? Do you draft the legislation? How do you get things done?
Sure. So, as we said, we're that point of contact with the private sector, whereby we really listen closely to the complaints and the challenges being faced by businesses. And when that is flagged, because it interrupts the ease of doing business, You know, we make sure that the government side is paying attention and is actively together finding what is a possible solution. When we have the go-ahead to proceed into a reform, we seek technical assistance from various agencies, for example, the IDB, the World Bank, the Caribbean Development Bank, the CARICOM Secretariat. And the truth is that there are so many initiatives, regional projects, as well as private sector windows that we can tap into that perhaps, you know, we're not doing the best job at really making the most of how Belize can benefit from some of these agencies and the support that they provide. And so we actually actively go after negotiating and securing the funding and the commitment to deliver on the actions needed. And so we would be very active throughout the life cycle of a reform process. So identifying the problem, finding out what the possible solution is, seeking donor funding for it, and providing project management, as well as providing technical reviews to the whole delivery of that, of the support. And so we would be there all along the way, hand-holding the ministries who are the real owners of their reform initiatives. But we're there because of our experience, both with the IFIs, as well as our expertise in project management, and from a technical perspective, to make sure that what is delivered is what is a good fit for Belizean businesses and the Belizean context. Because in this day and age, we need to be as efficient as possible with the monies that are available. And so we're that energy behind delivering that improvement.
Great, thank you so much for that. As I said, everybody plays such an important role in this ecosystem. You know, some of us hold hands, some of us code software, some of us finance. And so, you know, and others of us are the ones that go through the whole business planning process as Monique and BELTRAIDE does. So thank you, Ishmael, for that information. Is there anything else that you think our viewers and listeners should know about the EDC?
I think, you know, it's important to say that we're a champion for innovation. And innovation does not only mean using the internet or using digital technology. It simply means doing things differently. And in the same way that small businesses have had to adapt and try to find a way to sell their products, you know, get to their customers, create something in this time when everybody's either locked at home, or you can't open your business to the public. And so in the same way that people and businesses have had to innovate and change and figure things out, government also needs to innovate and change. And so the public sector frontline people have a great opportunity to, you know, upscale, you know, their skills and develop and grow in order to better deliver for what is clearly going to be the way of the future. So innovation is key.
Great, thank you so much, Ishmael, for that, that very important information. And it's great to see how in the background there are people working that, you know, the average Belizean out there that's trying to do business might not even know that there is that machinery constantly spinning in the background. And I know, and others should know as well, that the EDC works on matters that aren't even discussed here today that will affect businesses, such as looking at trade license reform and other areas that are so important to the daily budgeting, daily expenditures, and so on that businesses face, which during a time like this is even becoming even more important. Every dollar counts. And so it's good to know that there is a champion on the inside that can help to really communicate some of the strife of the business community and try to appeal to the compassionate side of government for those purposes as well. So thanks again, Ishmael. And at this point, we're going to move on now to Monique Usher, who is the manager of SBDCBelize, which is a small business development, is it corporation of Belize? What's that?
It's a small business development center.
Center. All right, we'll get to corporation soon. Don't worry about it. Right. So, but you know, even in Jamaica, for example, the Jamaica Business Development Corporation is on its own as its own statutory body, and sometimes there is reason behind that as well. So, but that's for a different discussion too. But right now, the Small Business Development Center of Belize is a unit of BELTRAIDE. Monique Usher is the manager of that unit. And as the name suggests, of course, it has been set up specifically for the support, to support small businesses in their, from inception, even as they graduate, I suppose, into larger businesses that would then fall under other umbrellas of BELTRAIDE as well. So you hold a very important role in this ecosystem. You help to nurture these businesses and even just encourage, because sometimes I'm sure that some of the difficulties that entrepreneurs encounter when they're trying to open their own business can be very discouraging for them. And sometimes they just need someone who can say, no, it's possible. Others have done it. I personally have clients who are products of the SBDC and are in export and otherwise, and vouch for the programs that they've gone through with BELTRAIDE and SBDC. So I know that that you do play an important part in exposure and marketing and structuring of these new businesses. So let me start off with maybe more of a general question for you. What tools are in place and offered by the SBDC and maybe by extension BELTRAIDE to encourage entrepreneurship?
Sure. Just to provide a highlight of SBDC, we've been in existence since 2012. And SBDC is a model that's adopted. So if you go in the Caribbean, or if you travel in the US, you will see that there are other small business development center that are within those territory. And our focus is to provide customized needs-based services to entrepreneurs, both aspiring and established enterprises. So we particularly work with micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. And we provide, as Ishmael mentioned, my face lit up when he said hand-holding, because we often speak of the hand-holding part, because again, when it comes to starting a business, what we've noticed is that, yes, you have persons who have studied business that eventually venture into getting a business started, but what you also notice is that persons with skills, persons with necessities. So if you look at an entrepreneur, you have an entrepreneur by necessity, and that's somebody that's looking at, okay, I have a bottleneck, maybe I'm not, I haven't been able to secure a job, so I need to find something to sustain myself and my family. And so you have persons who venture into entrepreneurship by necessity, but you know, our role here is to provide that support, to have them understand what it takes to run a business, what are the tools in terms of research, marketing, different areas that is needed to have that business remain successful. You also have those who are entrepreneurs by opportunity. And these are persons who have either a skill, they identify something that's missing in the market and they want to fill that void. So for us here at the center, our focus is to provide the business support through our advisory services. And again, I touched on customized needs space, because when we work with an entrepreneur, when we work with a client, we always assess and see where it is that they're at and what are their future aspirations, because we also want to see in terms of their vision, what is their vision and how do we add value to that vision that they have. So that is our focus here at the center. We also offer training, capacity building. Now, during the time of us transitioning to the new norm, what we had to do here at the center was to pivot. We could not go out and meet with our clients, but we had to capitalize on the use of technology. So when it came to training, we bridged that void with having our trainings done virtually. And what we noted was that our typical training, where we would have, let's say, 26 persons a part of that training, now we have a wider audience. So it has spurred that access to other persons who we might have not been able to provide the support to. So for us, we've seen where, you know, it allowed us to pivot. And of course, like Ishmael mentioned earlier, you know, with the whole registration process, for us, that is a service that we provide to our clients. We assist them, especially those who are in the startup phase. We assist them with the registration process, and we let them know what are the different tools, resources, or documents needed for the registration. And because the system now allows us to do it digitally, that has reduced the burden on our end, because then it would mean that somebody from our office would need to go into the company's registry to register for that client. And so it's something that, you know, creates efficiency in doing processes. So for us, it's looking at antiquated processes that, you know, we've had in the past, and how is it that those processes can be streamlined and improved through technology. So for us, the focus has always been on providing that support and also creating that linkage. So for us, we don't do this in isolation. We're an entire ecosystem. We work with other players to ensure that our clients that we're servicing receive the optimal service that's available in the market, and of course the linkage to allow them to grow and accelerate. So it's from that perspective that we operate. And we're pretty excited to have dialogue like these, because it allows us to, like Ishmael also mentioned, be the voice for entrepreneurs, because we know that we have that connection, we have that linkage and that influence to allow for us to, instead of compete with each other, we compete, we cooperate together to ensure that the greater good of the client is seen, and for us as a country to grow. So that's something that we're very excited to be a part of.
Great, wonderful. Does BELTRAIDE in any way prioritize or otherwise incentivize a technology focus amongst entrepreneurs? I know, for example, that Belize does have specific areas or sectors in which there is a focus for incentives and so on, like agro-processing and that sort of thing. When a business approaches BELTRAIDE, if they approach you with, say, a primitive technology, is this something you look at and say it's you need, in order to access some of the incentives, you will need to look at technology a little bit more? Is that something you push and encourage as a regular part of advising clients there?
We assess the nature of that business, what exactly it is that that business offer, and then we see what we refer to internally as intervention. So what support we'd be able to offer to that client. Just to highlight, over the past couple of years, we've had this initiative called the Business Hackathon. And for us, we're also looking at how do we tap into the young minds, and through that initiative, we're able to present a problem statement that the business community faces and have persons come up with solutions that address those needs. And the emphasis has been on using technology. It wasn't something that we hosted this year, but we work closely with the high schools, the sixth forms, universities, to ensure that in terms of ICT, that focus is there. And then of course supporting those initiatives. What we're looking at doing right now, and I mentioned this in the introduction, is creating that hub. So we're looking at having a website that women who are looking to get started in business can go and find other like-minded women like themselves to connect and to have them share their stories of how they got started. And so for us, the focus is on creating that ecosystem that enables entrepreneurs to be at a position to succeed in their enterprise.
Great, wonderful. And you mentioned that, you know, you have various entrepreneurs that approach you, of course, with very different ideas, different concepts that have to go through the planning process to see how they fit into Belizean society. Particularly with COVID, have you noticed any trends moving more towards tech-based entrepreneurship or tech-focused entrepreneurship? Have more of those sorts of companies been approaching you?
We did have few clients who have pivoted their operations, and so they have been integrating technology in their operation, or have been more present on the social realm. And I'm speaking in terms of, you know, promoting their business online, having using services such as Bistro. And I think that's something that we want to signal that we're, you know, we have entrepreneurs who are thinking along that line. One of our clients here at the center, and I like to refer to him as our tech guru client here, is Mr. Mervyn Budram. He now hosts a show called Creative Mondays. And he realized that, you know, with the lockdown, there was a need for us to create that space that persons who are experts in their respective fields can come and share, you know, what it is that they're doing, and to also create that opportunity for information to flow and to have, you know, his company still have a presence. You know, he might not be operating at his physical place of operation as accustomed by his clients, but he still is offering that support and is creating that dialogue that's needed to have other entrepreneurs who are going through this hardship and adapting to the changes that is brought about by COVID-19. So there are several instances where we've seen clients are embracing technology, and we are in support of that. And for us, it also meant that we needed to, you know, go back to the drawing board with some of the services that we offer, and to see how we can offer that service, but optimize how we offer it, and have that reach still accessible to the clients that we serve.
Great. So as we wrap up, is there anything, I mean, I'm sure there are entrepreneurs or even persons thinking of going into business that will be watching this panel. Is there anything that you want to say to them as it relates to accessing the services of the SBDC and BELTRAIDE, about the importance of it? Because of course, one of the things that we notice as well is that and in intellectual property law, I notice it too, is that entrepreneurs kind of understandably tend to first put a lot of their money, time, and energy into the product and not into the preliminary work that has to go into structuring yourself before you get into creating a product. The end result of that, unfortunately, is that a wonderful business launches and within 6 months, they are out of business, maybe because they didn't budget for a non-profit period, which is normal for a new business, or they didn't do the proper market research on competition and otherwise. So could you let us know what is so important about approaching help through SBDC, and why those who are thinking of it should take that step and contact you, and maybe even how they can do so?
Sure. For us here at the center, this is an open invitation to persons that might have had this idea lingering. I always wanted to do this. And, you know, sometimes the challenge with getting started is not knowing where to start. So we like to say that, you know, when you come, you work with us, we listen to what exactly it is that you're looking to get started doing, what enterprise you're interested in getting started. And we listen to what it is that you are trying to get started. And of course, we also look and assess what the market is saying in regards to that particular product or service that you're looking at venturing into. So for us, it's an open invitation for you to come in to sit and meet with one of our advisors. We do it virtually, so in terms of the connection, it's just a matter of scheduling the advisor and the respective client that's interested. And we devise a strategy to get you started. We look at, you know, in terms of monetary needs of that enterprise, what the startup cost is. We look at the formalization process. We walk you through identifying your customers through some exercises that we do, which would be like customer discovery, identifying who your customers is, and of course also looking at ways of marketing that respective product. So for those of you who are listening at home, you can reach us at 223-3195, and you will be able to access the advisory services. As a taxpayer, you're already contributing to the operations of the center, so it's just an invitation for you to access these services through the advisory or through the training capacity. And again, I started my statement by saying it's customized, needs-based, so it's not a one-size-fits-all. We do the assessment, we make recommendations as to what we recommend for that particular enterprise, and of course we do the hand-holding. So we see and we work with you throughout the life cycle, and we let you know what are the things that are working for your enterprise, what are the different adaptation measures or steps or interventions that you need to take to ensure that your business accelerates. And I think that's something that's important. And for us, we also have that connection with other stakeholders that might propel your business to a next level. So we're encouraging you to work with us and have us devise a strategy to allow your business to excel in its operation.
Thank you so much, Monique, for speaking on behalf of BELTRAIDE, the SBDC. Very much appreciated and very important information that needs to be included in this panel. So I'd like to turn now to finance in particular. And we have here today two panelists who are representing Atlantic Bank. We have Mr. Rudolfo Carcamo, who is a Senior Relationship Officer, and Mrs. Marcia Usher, who is the Retail Manager, both from Atlantic Bank. So I wanted us to start looking more at what I'm sure every business is very curious about. How do I finance my ventures? And why is it that sometimes I, as an entrepreneur, may go to one of your officers at the bank, ask for a loan, and find that as a small business owner or as an MSME, the thresholds seem a little bit out of reach. What constraints exist in the banking sector currently? You know, what kind of role does your bank play with supporting entrepreneurship? And I will begin with Mr. Carcamo, because of course, as Senior Relationship Officer as well, I'm sure that your one-on-ones with the business people who hold accounts with the bank would kind of inform you of some of the challenges that they face, and you have had to also help to work solutions for them. So once again, what role does your bank play with supporting entrepreneurship first and foremost?
All right, thanks once again, and good morning. So allow me first to give a little overview, introduction, before we engage. So greetings again from Atlantic Bank and its management and board of directors. And we want to congratulate all the organizers of this event. Unfortunately, EntreCon had to be canceled for obvious reasons. And as a partner, we have always partnered with BELTRAIDE and our continuous sponsorship of these events. So it gives us great pleasure to share some of our thoughts on the subject of bridging the gap with finance and technology. So, but first, just allow me as well to discuss that we would like to just start by saying that we live in a dynamic world where circumstances keep evolving, keep changing every single day. But one of the constant that is always popping up in front of us, right in front of our eyes, is technology, which continues to play a major role in transacting business today. And that will continue to be so for the future. So the pandemic has actually changed the way we are thinking and doing business. most of us are adapting to to the digital age. Even the remote, some of our remote customers, specifically speaking about our Mennonite communities way up north in Indian Creek. With the pandemic, we've had to change the way how we communicate. So they have embraced the change. We do sessions, meetings through Teams, and it really encourages us and say, listen, business has to continue. The productive sector, which we service, has to continue. So the pandemic is about the worst that has actually happened in trade, in the economy on a whole. We have always planned, and the regulators usually ask the banks to do various sorts of sensitivities. And we did not ever think that we would have had to plan for a major disaster as this one. We've always done sensitivities, what if scenarios on major disasters like a Category 5 hurricane and floods and tsunamis and so forth. But nobody ever imagined that a biological constraint as the pandemic would have come. All right. So at Atlantic Bank, we are so happy that we are able to play a major role in advocating for financial inclusion through our online and real-time electronic and payment systems to make life much easier and safer for customers. Our existing bank products and services, together with the advocacy that we do, places us in the forefront of bridging the gap with finance and technology for entrepreneurs. But to answer your question more directly, some of the challenges that we have seen mostly is the manner in how the customers present themselves, in terms of information. So I can list just a few, for example, the absence of planned business proposals. That is one of the biggest constraints that we've seen over the years, in as much as we help our customers, because obviously whenever we do our screening, the first thing that we look at is how prepared the customer is, because that gives us a first alarm as to whether it is a bankable project or not. So preparation is perhaps the key word here, how prepared they are. So to mitigate that, we engage them, because we don't just throw them out through the door. We actually engage them and start of asking them all sorts of questions regarding their businesses and so forth. So the minute we see an opportunity there, we continue to engage them. So BELTRAIDE has been assisting entrepreneurs with the skills set over time. And we have a memorandum of cooperation with BELTRAIDE. Yes, it has to be refined, but we continue to ask BELTRAIDE to assist us through a referral system, mainly to assist our customers in that regard. Some of the other constraints that we notice is the inadequacy of equity in a business. And so to mitigate that though, we see that venture financing starts with the customer. That is a mindset that has to be inculcated from an early age. As a matter of fact, we see this just as in our educational system. Education starts at home. So at an early age, our population has to understand how to develop a savings habit, because sooner rather than later, they will need, from out of 100 individuals, we would wish that 50 of them would eventually be entrepreneurs, but it starts with you. So you have to develop a savings habit so that you can, whenever you are ready to start your business, you will be able to provide the level of equity that is oftentimes required. Actually, it is a requirement from the bank. No bank will assist you or lend you money if you do not put equity first. So that is very, very critical. Other constraints that we see customers come into the bank is that they oftentimes don't allow a financial slack or cushion to lean on in times of emergencies, as in this case, for example, classic example with the major disruption in our economy, which is the pandemic. So we have to constantly also be mentoring our customers in terms of not overextending themselves with that burden, because that, if you start off bad in any venture, especially if you rely entirely on debt capital, you will soon find out that servicing that debt is a challenge, and it could dry up your cash flows from the beginning. Other areas to weak strategies or marketing strategies. And we, in as much as we guide them, we would wish that more planning and preparation is done so that when they come in, that lessens the time, the process time that we take for developing a good credit proposal for them. Weaker financial statements as well is another constraint. And I still haven't reached collateral, but you know that is one of the constraints that customers actually have. How do they, do they ever have any collateral to even come to the bank to negotiate a loan for their new venture? As you know, banks will determine the risk profile of that individual and the project, and new ventures are usually seen as risky, and thus lenders will invariably request tangible collateral. Yes, the project that is ongoing, the collateral registry project will serve just right, but we're yet to see how that will evolve so that we can be a part of it and grow our economy by assisting particularly the MSMEs. So in a nutshell, I believe that those are there's some others, but those that I have mentioned are the most critical challenges that we see as a bank.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Carcamo. Very, very insightful, and it really goes to show that a lot of the same issues that have been around for such a long time when it comes to MSMEs approaching for financing actually still remain. And I really took that point that you said about savings and having a savings culture overall, because what we found during the time of the pandemic, of course, was that those businesses that did have savings had to tap into the savings to save employees and to you know, pay their overheads. At the end of the day, that was really what kept them going. Many of those that didn't have that cushion just had to close or indefinitely close at least. And so very, very good points made during your presentation there. I'd like to turn to Mrs. Marcia Usher now, who is a retail manager for Atlantic Bank. How exactly is the bank integrating more and more e-commerce and technology for businesses to access your services?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us today. Many companies, including Atlantic Bank, are embracing e-commerce or business conducted over the internet. We understand that entrepreneurs and businesses need technology and digital banking solutions to increase their productivity, to expand their customer base, to improve the customer experience and reduce costs. We introduced e-commerce into our online banking platform in 2008 and have continuously improved the service. Through Atlantic Online, customers can make payments ranging from utility bills, government taxes, town council fees, to school fees. We have made the digitization of these payments easy and convenient for our customers and non-customers, and have made collections convenient, affordable, and hassle-free for our business partners. We have integrated e-commerce in the tourism industry. Our hotel internet reservation services and e-package allows customers to pay for hotel and tour reservations online using debit or credit cards directly onto the hotel and tour operators' websites. We have also introduced a payment gateway service that businesses integrate in their website to facilitate payments from customers wishing to make online purchases. We have seen an increase from our customers. We saw gym customers asking us to collect on their behalf for gym services because they had to reinvent themselves, and they were offering online training. They were offering virtual videos so that customers would continue doing their workouts at home. Our partnership with CISO and various government ministries has allowed us to use our e-commerce solution for the collection of taxes and fees, thereby making banking easier for our customers and making collection for government hassle-free as well. Our e-commerce solutions, including online banking, has witnessed continued growth, especially during the pandemic. Our digital services, along with our advocacy of using technology in our business and in our customers' business, has definitely assisted in closing the gap between finance and technology for our entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And what is it? Well, let me put it this way. Is Atlantic Bank currently exploring new initiatives to support customers? Were you exploring it even before? Is there anything new that has come about or is being explored in light of the pandemic?
Definitely, Marissa, Atlantic Bank is always at the forefront of introducing technology in our services. Many customers, we have seen an increase in the usage of our online banking platforms, our Go Mobile services, in which customers can do banking through the use of their telephone. We have seen an increase in our Atla Express services. Customers can do banking, the convenience of visiting merchant locations without having to step into the bank. So we have continued to improve these products in order to avoid social distancing. We introduced contactless cards so that customers are able to tap their own cards and enhance the safety during our customers during this period. So we are in various projects with ministries to enable the collection of services. We are working on enhancing our existing online banking platform for both retail customers and business customers. So we are definitely working on a number of initiatives to ensure that people get the most out of technology during these times.
Great, thank you. And so before we move on, there are likely entrepreneurs out there who, as a part of their wanting to get started, want a partnership with a bank. How could they reach you if they're interested in starting a relationship with Atlantic Bank and finding out a bit more about whether they are ready for beginning that relationship? Mr. Carcamo, as the Senior Relationship Officer, could you give maybe contact information or otherwise that someone could reach you at?
Yes, certainly. Actually, well, you know, we are physically present in all the district towns except for Punta Gorda and Dangriga. However, we have our network of offices and we also have that network with various entities. But my contact is well, do you want my telephone number? Do you think well, I can share that. It's not a problem.
It is, let me ask, is it that a business person could walk into any branch and an officer there is equipped to deal with them, or is there a specific business support unit that may need to be contacted by an entrepreneur?
Our network of branches are able to support any entrepreneur walking into office. Of course, with the pandemic still above us, we are encouraged to use you know, virtual meetings and so forth. We continue to engage with our meetings with our customers, as I said, even the Mennonites, a certain Mennonite group like the ones in Indian Creek and Little Belize, who have embraced technology, because at one time they were totally against technology, but they have managed to embrace, and we keep them engaged in virtual meetings. Yes, there will be times that a physical inspection of the customer's properties has to be made, but those will be limited, all right? But yes, our branch network is equipped to attend to any entrepreneur interested in seeking our products and services. And it's not only credit, right? It's deposits, it's the manner in how they will conduct their business, utilizing our electronic platforms and so forth.
Okay, great. And as a customer myself, I know that you have a very good website, which is atlabank.com, with a chat feature as well, right? So customers would be able to start a chat. I don't know if Mrs. Usher would want to expound on that a little bit with your website.
Yes, we have our chat feature, which is available from 8 to 5. Customers could chat any questions related to retail banking or commercial banking, SME banking. These questions are then turned to the appropriate departments and units, and they contact customers within 24 hours to ensure that these queries are answered, appointments are set up. So definitely a good tool that we have on our website.
So great information from Atlantic Bank, and we look forward to some of the developments that are to come. And of course, as everybody heard, you can go into any branch and inquire about services, or you can preferably use their mobile services, such as their website, to contact by chat, and someone would be in touch with you. So let's move on to our final panelist for today. He is Mr. Francisco Gonzalez. He's the Senior Information Communication Officer at the Central Information Technology Office, which is a Government of Belize entity. Mr. Francisco Gonzalez, welcome. I'd like to start out first by asking exactly what does CITO do? I think this is another one of those entities that keeps the machinery running in the background, but maybe doesn't have a huge public profile that many might know about. So what does CITO do exactly?
Hi, good morning, moderator. Good morning, representatives from BELTRAIDE, Atlantic Bank, and the Economic Development Council. It's a pleasure to be here representing the Central IT Office and the Government of Belize on this panel. What the Central IT Office does is it provides support for governments what's called the PFM systems, Public Financial Management Systems. Those are SIGTAS, which is the tax system, SmartStream, which is payroll and accounting. And we also manage government, the infrastructure of the government wide area network. So any government department that's currently connected to the government wide area network, we provide support, technical support. We also do website hosting, and we also do disaster recovery site hosting. We do that for the central bank and the national bank. And we offer these services of website hosting and disaster recovery site hosting to the public and to NGOs as well. PACT is an example of an NGO that is currently partnering with us.
Great, great. So that sort of answers a bit of my next question, but as it relates to the business sector and entrepreneurs who will be sort of our listeners here today, what does the work that CETA does, how does it affect indirectly or directly the entrepreneurs business sector in Belize?
Well, what we try to do is we try to assist government departments in making them more efficient and trying to see how they can deliver their services to their clients, which is usually the citizens of Belize, in a more streamlined and efficient way. An example that I would like to touch on is a partnership with the Labor Department that we have been working on since May, but was sidetracked a bit due to other important projects that came up during the pandemic. But it's one that we began engaging with them again, is the development of a tool whereby they would allow employers and individuals looking for jobs, job seekers, to submit their information. For employers, it would be submit information on vacancies, what requirements are there for the vacancies. For the potential job seekers, it would be for them to submit their qualifications, skill sets, and so forth. And this system would be able to find a match, and make the Labor Department's job much more easier, and also to provide them with useful information on employment and unemployment statistics. So that's an example of one that I believe would directly impact the entrepreneurs, right?
Okay, wonderful. Are there any other recent programs that you can think of that CETA has worked on that make doing business with the government of Belize easier?
Well, one of them that has completed and is just awaiting go live from the Belize Bureau of Standards would be the Belize Electronic License and Permit System, which is BELAPS. It was recently piloted with brokers and users of the system. And what this does is it allows for the importation and exportation of suppliers control unit related commodities, and it allows for data sharing to happen in the background. What used to be the situation was that you would have a physical permit be delivered to Baja, then Baja would do the runarounds for you, and then you would have to be contacting Baja trying to get updates and so forth. But what this portal does is it allows you to submit an application, and it allows you to keep track of the application electronically as it moves from department to department. So if it's a fisheries commodity, for example, you would submit your application, then you can see as it goes from fisheries to suppliers control unit, then when it comes in from customs, and you are alerted at every step of the way. So it eases that doing business with government in a way.
Great. And one other aspect that I'd like to touch on as well, because what we've discussed so far is that there are ministries that have pulled on CETA's expertise to try to complete some of these projects. I know that recently, for example, there was like a Microsoft partnership and otherwise, which was government-wide. How do those sorts of government-wide initiatives affect the everyday business of government? Because now we're finding that in a time like this, any government entity that you have a meeting with, it goes through Microsoft Teams, for example. And so how does this widespread, layout of a certain type of technology help to streamline government better? And is that a part of one of the goals that CETA has had thereby saying that it was a success to have that kind of rollout of Microsoft itself?
Well, it certainly was a success. We were using some of the tools before. Teams is a very common one, and we also have made a great use of SharePoint as well, where we share documents. You have different ministries and departments being able to collaborate in a more easier and streamlined way. Centralized platform is there, but with the pandemic and everything, it 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 forced government's arm then, and forced departments that were at one point hesitant to adopt this new technology. It showed them how easy it makes life, how easy it even outreach to some of their clients or some of the businesses that they serve. It made it much easier for them to meet, collaborate, share ideas, and work on projects together, especially since we have to be mindful of close contact and everything during this pandemic.
Great, great. Very good information. Is there anything else that you think that the public should know about CETO?
About CETO, well, I guess I mentioned what we do, but one thing that I would want to mention is because what the pandemic has caused is it brought to the forefront the use of technology and how easy it can make our lives. But I do want to stress that it is important that we do not sacrifice security for convenience, because especially for entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs coming into the business, into cyberspace, creating these new platforms and new services for people to use. But one thing you don't want to do is to create a situation that results in leak of information or disenfranchises stakeholders. So that's just something that I would want to put out there.
Great, very, very important. And that also ties into what Ishmael was saying earlier about the regulatory aspect that's coming in about data protection, public sector data sharing, and that sort of thing. So it really ties everything together in terms of how the work of so many different entities are actually really supporting the same goals, essentially. Which is so important when we're rolling out projects of this magnitude. You know, so I know that we do have our time limits, and so I believe that we will have to end at this point in time. I'd like to say thank you so much, though, to the panelists. I encourage also that any viewer who has questions about what was discussed today uses the opportunity to reach out to SBDC and BELTRAIDE, to Monique, Usher, or any of the team there, and to also, you know, put forward their concerns, their questions, which could be passed on to any of the panelists that appeared today and can be answered further for you. Unfortunately, we can't have our live Q&A for various reasons. But of course, we do want to continue that engagement as well. Monique, can I invite you to say any last words to help wrap up the session today?
Sure. Thank you very, very much. I truly enjoyed the dialogue. I think the conversation was much needed, and it is something that we're going to continuously encourage, because I think it's through sharing that we're able to identify some of the synergies and to provide enhancement suggestions for our stakeholders, and of course internal to BELTRAIDE. I just wanted to have us end on that note that, you know, the discussions did focus on digitization and how we're building resilience, and we have identified several digital tools that can help MSMEs. I think when we look at digitization, we have to look at it from the perspective of how is it that we can be able to afford cost-saving measures. What are some of the standards, and how is it that, you know, we could embrace digitization? And I think the word that was echoed throughout our discussion was embracing technology, and I think that's important to have us be able to automate some business processes and reduce the reliance of manpower, and have us focus on producing the quality products and services, and ensuring that moreover, when it comes to digitization, it is from that perspective of enhancing an MSME's competitiveness, and to also understand consumer behavior. And I think that's something that's very important. If we embrace the technology, and I know you cited a scenario, with the name search, whereas it would have taken X amount of hours, within 2-3 seconds, you're able to access that information. And I think that is something that's important. And if we embrace the technology, we can understand and analyze some consumer behaviors. I know we didn't touch on algorithms, but again, in terms of big data, these are the different areas that we want to be able to focus on when it comes to technology, and use that information to allow us to make some decisions in our respective businesses. And again, for enterprises that might feel, well, my business is too small to embrace technologies, there are simple ways of ensuring innovation takes place in those enterprises. And innovation might come through processes that are lengthy. How is it that we can adjust some of the processes for that operation? And I think, it's from that perspective, we don't only want to think of innovation as isolated with just embracing technology, but processes that allow us to pivot our operation and optimize what it is that we're doing. So we're excited to have had this discussion, and I'm certain the viewers at home who tune into the show will appreciate the information that's being shared, and of course the collaboration. And I think that's something that we want to harp on. We appreciate the collaboration. I know November is celebrated as National Entrepreneurship Month, and so we want to have more of these dialogues, and this is leading up throughout the year. And of course, to have our viewers understand that when it comes to this pandemic, we're all in this together, and I think working collectively allows us to go through this transition period in a more manner that allows us to better poise our operation and to pool our resources. So I want to thank you, Marissa. You did an excellent job with moderating for us today. Mr. Ishmael, it's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. I know Francisco, we can always knock on Sita's door. And of course, our friends at Atlantic Bank, Mr. Rudolfo, Mrs. Usher, we appreciate the conversation, and we're happy to hear of the strides that the various institutions are making in the effort of addressing the needs of the business community. So thank you very, very much.